It's an investment in your future. Literally, it was the rocket fuel for us.
It's essentially a seller financing strategy. The seller becomes your bank. It's going to help you get more properties.
It's such a powerful tool.
Is just to make it very simple for people to understand. So no big words.
It's a great strategy for something like that. If that's something that you're experiencing and you're stuck, I would strongly consider giving it a look and come into the course.
That helped us move from being buy and hold landlords with jobs to full-time real estate investors because our cash flow went up immensely with agreement for sale. And what it can do and how it can change your world and your life is unbelievable.
I promise you, you're going to learn something and it's going to blow your mind.
You can do this. It is not rocket science, but knowledge is everything.
All right. Well, that video was a little bit shaky, but there was lots of great information in there. I hope you heard enough to kind of tell you what we're going to talk about today on the Monday main event, Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Series. We meet up every Monday at 5 p.m. Mountain and talk about creative real estate, what it is, how you do it, get some of our students on to talk about how they've implemented creative real estate strategies. We get experts to come on and talk, tax experts, foreclosure experts, development, finance, insurance, and we go through examples and really just try and dig deep into creative strategies and how those can supplement a buy and hold portfolio, how creative strategies can help you buy more properties when you're stuck at the bank or you're stuck for a deposit because you can't qualify or you don't have enough deposit to buy another property. And that's pretty common, pretty darn common. We also, my wife Dawn and I, put on focus workshops, and we did just an amazing focus workshop in Calgary yesterday, March 18th, Saturday in Calgary, March 18th. We did a wholesaling workshop, which was a ton of fun. My God, it was lots of fun. We started about 7:30 in the morning, and we finished it off about 7:30 at night. It was fantastic. I love doing it. Energizing. I did a whole 12 hours there, and I felt great at the end of the day. So it's always easier when you're teaching something you love and when it's really, really interesting. So we have another focus workshop coming up in Toronto on April the 1st. This time it's all about the strategy called Agreements for Sale, otherwise known as AFS. And that's what that video was about that we started out the show with tonight. AFS is a seller financing strategy that can just jet propel your portfolio and your real estate career. So today we are going to chat with Mr. Dan Heon. There he is. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Mr. McGuire, how are you doing today? I was telling somebody about you the other day, and I said, "Oh, he's only been my real estate lawyer for 27 years now. This is Barry McGuire."
I was gonna say as we start this out, I wanted to go back to when we first started working together, and yeah, almost 30 years now. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, doing Varsity House mortgages out there in Northwest Calgary there.
Right. Yes, I remember that as clear can be.
Too
I
funny.
do remember. Man, oh man. Well, Dan, thanks for coming on today, and it's great that you are on because, folks, if you don't know Dan, you don't know him. I want to tell you that he's a premier mortgage broker. Dan works across the country. Doesn't matter if you're I think it doesn't matter mostly where you are. I'll let you talk about that part, Dan, but he is not strictly an Alberta-based mortgage broker. If you're in Ontario and you need help, Dan can help you in Ontario. So I want, Dan, for you to go back those 27 years ago and talk about what was happening in your life to get you to the point where you were investing in real estate, because you moved from doing something else as a full-time job into real estate. And I think people like to hear what you were doing way back when and why you made the move, and then some sort of history over the 27 years. We don't have to talk about every deal you've done, but, a bit of a summary to get you to where you are today.
Thanks, Barry. That was kind of a great segue because it really talks about the intro into AFS, because, that was a tool that was near and dear to my heart. Like, so many people on your call or on that intro, I loved it. And anyways, to your point, going back 26 years, they say that every real estate investor will start the journey when they have that why, or why am I doing this business or starting my own business? And for me, that why was I hated my day job and, knew that it was a dead end road, I guess, right? And I had to take a look at it and say, okay, you know what? If I stay with this job, I'm going to be here for the next 40 years. And I'll be like these other 800 men and hate life, hate their job, and just are there because I don't want to lose my pension. And so lucky enough at 26 years old, I was a young guy, and, I didn't have a lot of cares in the world. And so I just said, hey, you know what? I'm going to look at this thing called real estate. And I know that wealthy people own it, but I have no idea how does a young guy, go and create a fortune. And so this was a journey I came along and met Mr. Tim Johnson and all the rest of the crew. And one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I had bought, I think, 8 or 9 properties my first 2 years. And back in those days, though, Barry, I think we were buying those condos in Varsity House for $58,000 each. So, but anyhow, the journey, then I had enough cash flow from my 8 properties. I was able to, quit my day job. And I still remember my family saying, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, of course, I'm a professional real estate investor and I make $1,500 cash flow, so, life is good for a young guy. That's not bad. Gas in the pickup truck and yellow box groceries, and away I went. But, leading into, how the world of investment real estate really goes for most of us is we'll buy a certain number of properties, and then the bank says what? Like, they just shut you down. I used to call it like the wall. And everybody, I don't care who you are, where you are, how much cash you have in the bank, there comes a time when you have enough money, enough of the bank's money where you become a risk to them and they start saying no. And that's when, I took a look back at what I had achieved and said, this real estate stuff really works. Why is the bank shutting me down? Look at my net worth statement. It's great, but they don't want to give me any more money. I'm finally getting on this roll and they don't want to keep me going. So, that's where I had to go back to the drawing board and, meet with all my real estate advisors, which of course you are one of them, and learn to say, hey, if the banks are telling me no, how can I keep going to buy real estate? And that's where this whole world came up with agreements for sales and rent to owns and all of these other strategies that I had no idea, what was involved or how this worked or what contracts do you need or how do I protect myself? How do I protect my seller? And, this flurry of questions that come up as you learn these exciting techniques. But then it was like, okay, what, how, when, where, and show me, what to do and I'll do it. And this is where, that AFS came in. And I think over that time, I bought 9 or 10 houses, with $1. I remember, filling out your worksheets and saying, how much money, Dan, do you have in this deal? And I said, Barry, I broke the bank at 1 loonie. So, and you're always so kind and supportive. Say, good job, Dano, keep on going in, keep doing it. We're here for you. So, that was the kind of crazy thing. But for a real estate investor where the bank says no, it's unthinkable to say, okay, without any partners, no joint venture partners, no third-party equity, expensive money bank, I can go out and buy a house, have control of that house, have all the cash flow of the house, have all the mortgage paid down on the house, and when I sell it, keep all the profit. It was like, what the heck? What's going on here? Whoa, stop right there. How the heck did you just do that? And that's where we talk about the agreement for sale. And I think the exciting part, when you announced, and Andrea and I were at a conference here in Toronto, and I heard I've been spending a lot of time in Toronto and back and forth out west in Toronto. And, just hearing that you were bringing the AFS course out to Toronto, I was like, oh my gosh, Barry, you have no idea what your timing is to bring this technique and all these strategies to the marketplace. For all my friends here on this call that are in Toronto, that the market is still kind of getting adjusted to the 6 interest rate increases and the affordability. Hey, Valden, how are you doing, buddy? The interest rate increases and everything else, that's impacted our market right now. In Vancouver, similarly, we're seeing a 20% pullback on real estate prices. And some people, I think, are just on the sidelines waiting for the market to correct itself, adjust itself. And anytime you get a seller that just can't fix their problems by putting a for sale sign on their front doorstep, for us as real estate transaction engineers, remember Ron LeGrand, of course, right? Transaction engineer. The more ways we know to put a real estate deal together, the more tools in the toolbox, the better, more successful you're going to be. And I really firmly believe that. And that's really what, we're talking about here tonight, is just another tool, another way to buy real estate. And, keep it going and have it in your box, in your toolbox, because you just never know when you're going to need that. Right. And so, a lot of people say to me, oh, Dan, you bought all these houses for $1 and no qualifying and all that kind of stuff. If it's so easy, why aren't people doing this? It's like, come on. And the way I respond to that question is, yes, it's easy if you have the right knowledge and the right team and the right know-how, but I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression. It's, instead of spending money for a big down payment, you're spending time, because really the key is we're problem solvers as real estate investors, especially when you use this technique. And, being an investment specialized mortgage broker, I may have a lucky position where I hear about problems and I try and solve them with, whatever financing I have or what have you. But every once in a while, there'll be a position or that a real seller, real estate owner has that just can't be solved. Through whatever means it, is going on. There's a solution that, throwing an 18% mortgage at just won't, solve the problem.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So that's amazing, Dan, that after all these years, you're still so enthusiastic, A, about real estate, and B, about the creative strategies, and particularly the agreement for sale strategy. But that's what passion does for you. If you love what you're doing, I mean, you quit the job you were doing that you saw as a dead end, and all the other guys hated it too. But I'm pretty sure you don't hate real estate.
Well, number two things going on there. I'll finish my thought about Ontario with the sellers that are kind of questioning what's going on in the market. I got to sell my house, but is the market going to come back up? I think after now 6-8 months, we're seeing where people are unsure. Is the market going to go back up that fast? They're going to have to sell. We're seeing situations where sellers are a bit concerned. Hey, my mortgage just jumped X% in payments. I can't afford these payments. Like, how do I get out? There's not enough equity in my property now that the price came down. How can I get out? And these are the situations that we're looking for. So I think now more than ever in Ontario, those of us that are kind of looking in the Ontario market and shopping around need to be watching and paying attention for these types of situations to pop up, because when the market is super heated and they can call any real estate agent and have a lineup of people to buy it, this strategy is not, typically their first choice, right? So I think now is the time to be watching and learning and being ready for it, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, the agreement for sale strategy is, as you said, and I've said, a seller financing strategy. And when you pound a sign in the lawn and there are 10 people who will pay you over list and lots over list for your home, why do you need seller financing? You don't. Absolutely not. But when the market twists and shuffles and goes down and is unsettled, and when values have dropped, when you put up a 5 or a 10% down payment, but the values have dropped 20%, my goodness, all of a sudden, if you have to sell, you are underwater or close to being underwater. And that's when creative strategies show up, because as you said, we are transaction engineers per Ron LeGrand. We are problem solvers, and you can't solve everybody's problem. That's true, but there are many circumstances where you can solve a seller's problem through the agreement for sale strategy and get control of properties for little or no money down. And that's the magic of it. And it's been a bit of a tough slug in Ontario with the market always going up. And the market's always going up. Seller financing is not really attractive to sellers. But now that it isn't going up anymore, and it's kind of shaky and a little up here, a little down there, all of a sudden, that agreement for sale strategy is a problem-solving strategy that, if you know what it's all about, if you understand how to apply it, there are properties available. And that's why we're so excited to come to Ontario and talk about this and let people know how to actually do it.
Yeah. Hey, Barry, would this be a good time? Is it okay if I share kind of two scenarios just to share with people, just so they get a sense of what they're looking for? Would that be okay?
That'd be great, Dan. Let's have it.
One house that I found that I bought, I was just shopping around. I love for sale by owners. If anybody, knows a great place to find for sale by owners, that is a wealth of knowledge. Because what I find is, if we as real estate investors can get in front of the seller and just talk, just meet them, what's going on? Hey, I love this house. I'd love to buy it. How fast do you need out of this house? These are the kinds of the key questions. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, all of your manual has these killer questions in it and all that kind of stuff, right, Mary?
Yes.
So anyways, just talking to sellers and finding out who they are, where they're at, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And, getting to know you and seeing you're a real legit, honest business person is key. You can sit, some of the best deals I've done is sitting at a kitchen table, across the table from a seller, and just saying, hey, what do you need out of this deal? I want to provide that for you. And this is what I need to make it a win-win, that kind of thing. And oh my goodness, I lost my thought. Oh, the reason. So, sitting and talking with people, I came across this for sale by owner, and I went to check out the place. It was actually a suited bungalow, and I can't remember the fellow's name, but he wanted to basically sell his house and be gone in 30 days. So what the situation was, when I ended up talking to this guy, is that he was getting job transferred. And so what that meant is, he owned this house. I think this particular one was in Alberta, but he had to be gone. He had a mortgage on there. He had a tenant in the basement suite and just needed to be gone. He needed someone to make that mortgage payment, take care of his house, make sure that everything was fine, and just leave the financial issue, or not burden, but financial responsibility. That's the word I'm looking for. So he says, okay, I love what you're talking about. I love how you're able to take care of all of that stuff. I'll tell you what, if you get your lawyer to paper up exactly what you just said, you take care of this house, I'm gone, I can leave. I know that at some point in the future, you're going to pay me all that equity I've got in the property. I don't care. I don't need it now, but I just need to leave and have somebody I know, like, and trust take care of my house. And we did that deal. And within 30 days, I had another nothing down suited bungalow that, gave me a little bit of positive cash flow. So it worked out really good. So just, talking to that person and seeing that they need to be gone or out of the province, or I think in this case, he was leaving the country, and solving that problem and knowing how to do it, and giving him the knowledge and confidence that I was there to take care of his house. And, I would pay him the money, aka seller financing, at some point. I think I did that deal for 5 years. That's the other thing. I talk to other investors and they say, how long do you do those deals for? I said, as long as I can get. I know you, and most of my contracts, I try and get the 5-year mortgage, and then an extension for another 5 years on top of that if I need it. You know what I'm saying? As long as you can get, some people say, well, I'm not giving you 10 years, but I'll give you 4 years. Okay, great. Whatever, the longest you can get on that deal, the more gives you, the investor, more options on how to escape that one. So I promised 2 scenarios. I'll give another one really quick.
Sure. No.
So in the finance world, one of my private lenders was lending money for this guy building a beautiful brand new home. And, I did the math to make sure that my private lender was covered. And what happened in this particular case is the market had a little bit of a correction and pullback. And so the builder didn't have as much spread or profit in all of his properties that he was building. So basically, he would sell a house for exactly what he's got into it. Well, you know as well as I do that, if you sell a house for what it costs you, there's not a lot of profit. And profit is what makes the mortgage payments. And so, we basically had to go up to Mr. House Builder and say, look, you haven't paid us. We realize things are tough. You're a great guy, but we need you to sign over this house ASAP, or, you're in big financial trouble. And so, it all came through, and eventually, his lawyers, mentioned to him that, hey, you better take this guy's deal, or, it's only going to make your problem worse. So basically what happened is my private lender took back ownership of the property, and they were out of the province, and said, hey, Dan, this house now, he actually was lucky enough to finish it. I think he took out some of that equity to finish off some of his other projects. So this one was actually finished. And anyhow, my private lenders had title to the property. They're out of the province. And they said, Dan, we're not landlords. We are just money lenders. We don't want this property. Can you even get $1 million house to cash flow? And they said, we don't want this thing. And I said, you know what? My brain is kicking in. I said, you know what? You own the house. Why don't we put an 80% mortgage on that house, and you lend me a little bit of that equity, which I will pay you, and I'll pay you all the payments. I'll pay all the taxes, all the insurance. I will take care of this thing and babysit it for you the next 5 to 10 years for you. And I'll make sure you do not lose one penny. Well, that was the only thing that they wanted to hear, is I don't want to lose money. And I said, we'll do this deal. And they ended up putting a brand new mortgage at 80%, lending me back a little bit of that equity, and another $1 deal was made. That was that was fun. So it's just being there and knowing what to do and how to help people, really, right? Because that guy just said, I don't have time to list this with a realtor. I'm leaving in 30 days, but it's an opportunity I just can't pass up on. And, so often people say, well, those scenarios are never around. Like, how are you finding these things? And like I said, it's just all being out there, talking to people, talking to sellers, and, finding solutions for those people. That was just 2 examples. And you know what? With all the people that you and I know over the 27 years, I mean, how many stories like this do we hear about and know about and have done ourselves? Like, this is just solving the problem. So I think more people in Ontario need to learn this strategy, because, I think the system, it's an untapped market is how I describe it. Because, if you can walk up to a seller and say, hey, look, I can solve all your problems, and I don't need to go to a crazy bank, and you get what you want, I get what I want, who wouldn't take that deal, right? So.
Yeah, well, Dan, you touched on quite a number of things in those stories, but and you've said a couple of times, but I want to emphasize that the agreement for sale strategy and many creative strategies work best when you are solving somebody's problem. And in both of your stories, people had problems, and you were able to bring the solution. And so, how many times have we heard people say this to us? Come on, who would do a deal like that? You're
all the time.
Guy who had to move. Like, who would give up his house and give you all the equity and give you a 10-year renewal just to accommodate what he needed, which was to get the heck out of Dodge and get to his new job? Who would do that? Well, he did it. Your private lender had his version of doing that. And every time we do one of these deals successfully, there's a problem to be solved. And many times, people looking at this strategy who don't know anything about it, or who are not real estate investors, they're very skeptical that sellers will make those kinds of decisions. But you and I know that once you've done what you did, which is sit at the kitchen table, in some way, shape, or form, you establish trust, you tell a seller how you can help them, you figure out what their pain point is, what their problem is, you give them a logical solution that they need. It doesn't have to be logical to the whole world. It's logical to them. It's what they need. And as soon as you give them the solution to their problem and you've built some rapport and some trust, they will fend everybody off who's saying, "What are you doing that with Dan? That's crazy. Why would you do that?" They do those deals all the time. It's the basis of creative real estate is solving deals, and you just never can tell what motivates a seller, but you sure can figure out what it is that will help them, give it to them, and do deals. Is that not right?
100%. And it always makes me laugh about, before getting into this world of investment real estate, I honestly thought the way that you buy properties was that you save up this, you'd spend years, 10, 20 years saving up this huge, back in the day was 25% down payment, right? You had to save up 25% of the value of that house with cash. And then you walked into the front door of the bank and you held your fingers really, really tight. And you got the guy with the belt. Remember Bill Buterman's? I love his thing where he actually hold his suspenders and put the glasses down and say, "Okay, young man." And, you had to cross your fingers. And if you rolled the dice right and you said the right things, then your banker threw that $60,000 mortgage at you and you walked out on a homeowner, and, after going through this whole world of real estate investing and learning this strategy and that strategy, even the stuff that you're talking about, this will be mind blowing for someone that says, "Oh my God, my bank just shut me down. I bought 3 houses. They won't give me any more. I love real estate. What the heck do I do? I really don't want working with partners, but I love this." And they come across this video or one of your other videos and say, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I just want to see what that bald guy is talking about and how did he do it?" That kind of thing. So I love sharing this stuff if you can't tell. And it really, I think being an investment mortgage broker gives me an extra edge, and I'll tell you why. Because not only do I look at my deals, but I look at thousands of my clients, not thousands of deals, thousands of my clients. And I can actually guarantee and tell you that every single one of those didn't have an unlimited number of mortgages at any given bank. I can absolutely guarantee you. So what does that mean? Anybody listening to this call, if you have 3 properties, if you have 4 properties, if you have, you're lucky enough to get 10 properties. I mean, it's not hard to get 10, $50,000 properties. So, but if you have lots of properties, guarantee there's going to come a time where that favorite banker who's been giving you all these mortgages comes to you and sits you in the boardroom and says, "No more, my boss shut us down, no more for you." And then that's where, how do we keep going? And I love that comment. The bald guys are taking over. Anyhow, so there comes a time in everybody's career where that's going to come to play. And, I think about, how do you do this? How does a person continue on? Well, you can continue on by doing sandwich leases, right? Where maybe you do a lease for a property and then you put another lease and you're the guy in between. If you're charging $2,500 and you're only paying, $2,000, there's a $500, lift for you in between there. So, but it always comes down to, I want to own the property. I want all the ways that real estate pays us, with the mortgage, the appreciation, oh my goodness, the cash flow, and any kind of instant equity if you're going to fix, clean, and paint it, right? So I want to take charge of that. And if the banks are shutting me down, then of course the AFS is brilliant for doing that in seller financing. So it's like, then it comes down to, what do I say to the seller? How do I market and find the seller, which is all what you teach in your class. I can't believe you do all that. Are you doing all that in one day? Are you?
Yes, Dan. Well, let's talk about the day. So it's April 1st in Toronto.
Yeah.
So that's a Saturday.
Well, I'm just thinking there's so much information packed into 8 hours? I'm thinking it's 18 hours, right?
Well,
how are you going to do all that? Tell us how you're going to do all that.
Well, Dan, you've been to those events. I mean, you know what happens? We start pretty early in the morning and we have a formal part of the program that goes on about, 8 or 9 hours, depending. And then our promise to the students is that we will stay at the end of the day until every question is answered. And sometimes we're there at 6:30 when we finished at 5. And then at 6:30, we go, you know what? We still have questions. Let's go down to the restaurant and have a cold one. And we carry on until 9 or 10 at night. So maybe it does end up being 18 hours in the end. But I just want to talk a little bit about what is going to happen in Toronto on April 1st. I want people to hear that. Firstly, they're going to show up and we're going to feed them properly with a proper breakfast and a proper lunch, because there's lots of thinking and skull learning going on, and we want you to be well fueled up for that. We go through the 7 steps of how to understand and work with an agreement for sale. We have experts like Dan and other people who have done many, many, many agreements for sale. They will be doing role plays. You want to know how to talk to a seller and explain? We do a role play that will show you exactly what to say to a seller. If you want to explain it to them in plain English, a way they can understand without covering up with weird legal terms that nobody understands, we tell you about that. Do you want to know how to write up a deal? We'll make you do examples and run through exercises on how to exactly fill out the paperwork. Do you want to know how to set up your bank accounts and do administration? We go over everything from, just starting out on an agreement for sale right to the exit when you might get a big fat check in your hand. There's a manual that's about 3 inches thick that you get to take away. Well, maybe it's not 3 inches. It's big. And we provide you with all of the documents, all of the actual legal documents in digital format that will update and make sure they're right up to date, including in Ontario, where, as you know, Dan, agreements for sale are in the current market getting legs. And we have lawyers in Ontario who go, hey, agreements for sale, great. I know how to do that. And I have clients who want to do it. So it's a full day program from start to finish. People will go away with all the tools they need. They then get to join our private Facebook group of over 500 students who will support them after the event. We're not just going to have you in for the Saturday and then throw you out the door to flounder on your own. You get lots of support as you are now a student and in the coming months after agreements for sale. And the group is, Dan, very supportive. You can say anything to the group about you've got this deal or that deal, or how do you work this or how do you work that. And students are generous and very helpful with their time and their information. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing on April 1st, and that's what happens afterwards. So just wanted people to know a little bit about that before you and I move on to other things we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, no, that's a great service. I think the key is invaluable about, working that strategy. I think, at least I know from me being a beginner investor, I would read books, I would absorb all the information, but at the end of it, a weekend, I'm thinking back in the Aaron Raymond days, I'd grab all that knowledge and information and think this is amazing. But then, go back home and go, oh my God, like I'm too scared. What if I make the wrong move? I'm going to lose $100,000. This is crazy. It might work for that guy on the stage, but here I am, young guy at home. And, I think the Facebook, there was no Facebook back in those days. So, having someone you can pick up and having Andrea in there, I can't believe, she has time in the day to answer questions. But, there's many, many other experts who have been doing lots of agreement for sales in there too. And I think that's a big support. So I'm glad. And Donna's in there too. Oh my goodness. Donna's spending hours and hours in there supporting the students. So I appreciate her.
She's the producer and she keeps us all on the right track. I am eternally grateful for folks who have taken some of our courses and who've generously volunteered their time as experts. I know at our meetup last weekend doing the wholesaling course, we counted up the number of deals that the focus team leaders had done. And we were near 1,000. We were near 1,000 deals that they'd done between. There were actually 8 people there helping out. So this is not Barry and Dan flapping their gums about some untested strategy that nobody really knows about, and you got to be, some sort of real estate savant to be able to put it into practice. This is a down-to-earth discussion of all of the nuts and bolts of the agreement for sale strategy, how you find deals, how you write deals, how you negotiate deals, how you exit deals, how you administer deals, and plenty of examples, plenty of hearing from the focus team about how they handled a particular part of an agreement for sale. What do you say when you're sitting around the kitchen table with the seller? How do you meet the objections of their friends who say, don't do anything with Dan? My goodness, he's a bald guy with a mustache. You can't trust him. You know, like people love to be naysayers. They love to be the armchair experts who know nothing about what's going on. But you and I have seen this, Dan, that once you've established trust and once the seller believes that you're there to solve a problem in a win-win way, because we don't beat people up. We try and make sure it's a win-win for them and a win-win, a win for them and a win for us, which makes it a win-win. Once you do that, that creates a big shield around the seller and protects you and the seller from his neighbor, from his brother, from his lawyer, from whoever he was into to say, why would you do that with Dan? That's crazy. Bop, 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 bop. Everybody loves to say no. And I've had any number of sellers look these naysayers in the eye and say, that's great, but nobody else is helping me. And Dan is. Are you going to help me? No? Great. Well, I'm going to do my deal with Dan. So that is, it's a really important thing to understand about seller motivation and about how creating trust gets deals done when people believe you're going to help them.
I think what's coming up for me as we're talking about that, and I'm going to share that with everybody listening because this is like a little secret tidbit. Is that okay if I share that?
Yes, please.
I think what's coming up in my mind is you got to be a good listener. And this will come up. I've heard Andrea say it, Sherilyn. I've heard this many, many times. But if you're talking more than they're talking, that's going to be a bad night for you. It's like, you know what? Because you can talk about all this confusing stuff about how AFS works and lawyer this and lawyer that, and it will go right over their head. You need to be figuring out what does this person need and how am I going to solve it? Nothing more. There's nothing more important than you listening and asking, well, how does this work? And why is this important to you? And what's going on here? So if you're not a practiced listener, YouTube that stuff, read a book, whatever, become a highly, highly effective listener. I'm thinking about how many hours and hours you and I, Barry, doing our jobs, listening to people. How many hours have we been listening and listening? I consider you an amazing listener. And I guess in a roundabout way, I've been listening to people for many, many years as well. But more importantly, when you're sitting across that table from the seller, what's going on for them? What's their motivation? How can I solve this problem? And if you can figure that out, you don't even have to necessarily figure out that day. As long as you have that relationship built, right? They like you, they trust you. You can go back to the Facebook group and say, hey, I got this guy, but I'm not quite figuring out how I can solve that problem. And you get 10 people blast. This is how you fix that. And you're like, oh my God. You come back, you get a deal, and then you send Barry a Starbucks coffee because his group got your $100,000 deal done or whatever profits in there. So anyways, I think that little tidbit from my experience is you got to be a good listener.
Yeah, it's so important because as soon as you got to be a good listener anyway, but as you establish the rapport and create the trust, which you try and do right from the first time you meet the seller, as soon as the seller believes that you're there to help them, they will tell you everything. They will tell you everything. You will find out exactly what their problem is, and they will talk and talk and talk and tell you and tell you and tell you. And when a seller's doing that, because you know how to listen, it's not too hard to pretty quickly hear what the issue is and then figure out the problem. And as you said, if you don't know what the solution is, say, I'll get back to you tomorrow on this, and talk to the Facebook group, who will for sure have some good ideas for you. So that is, that's definitely true.
Hey, can I throw out even more tidbits and more amazing stuff? Is that okay? Are you okay,
Absolutely.
Barry?
Yeah, I'm okay, Dad. You
So
throw
I
away.
remember this one time doing a deal and sitting there, and I came close to doing this deal with this guy, and he says, "You know what, Dan? I just need $100,000. Like, I love what you're doing. It's amazing. I really like you. I want to do this deal, but if we get the mortgage or you pay the mortgage I have in place, I really need this $100,000 out of the deal, and then I can lend you, whatever is left. But I really need that 100,000. And you told me you didn't really have 100,000. So what can we do there?" Anyways, I went back, I thought about it. I came back the next day and said, I got it. And you know what we ended up doing?
What?
We took out a mortgage for, let's say, I think in this example, it was $130,000. We put a private second mortgage on top of his TD bank. And then I took that $130,000 mortgage and sold it as an investment. Okay, this is the really key part that I want to share with people. So I have this mortgage that's placed on the seller's house for $130,000. Okay. And I think I needed 5% or some low interest rate on that 130 to make the mortgage payments from the rent that I would be collecting from that house. Okay. So just to rewind really key, because this is part of the strategy, is I created $130,000 mortgage on that house with payments that I could afford, given what the first mortgage payments were, the taxes and all the rest of it. And I said to the seller, I said, what we're going to do is we're going to take that $130,000 and we're going to sell it to an investor in the open market. And so think about this: if you're a cash investor and you're sitting at home and you don't want to do investment real estate, but you have $100,000 to invest, and somebody comes up to you with this idea and they say, you know what, Mr. Investor, I've got this $130,000 mortgage. I see you have $100,000 that my seller needs. Why don't you purchase this $130,000 mortgage for a special price today of $100,000? Okay. So imagine this: you are buying a $130,000 asset for $100,000. Anybody on this call want that deal? Barry, you want one?
I'll take one.
So
Sign
long
me up.
story short, what we did is we created this mortgage for 130, sold it for $100,000, which is an ecstatic rate of return. I even forget the numbers, but it was like mind blowing. You would not take that deal if you saw what the ROI was, guaranteed by that seller's house, which in the future was my damn house, right? So, we're going to make sure that investor gets his money. So anyways, long story short, if you can buy anything, for, a discount like that, it's a good win-win all the way around. And so what happened is when we sold that contract, or sometimes called note, or sold the paper, or sold the mortgage, that seller, my agreement with the seller was that 100,000 would flow right through to the seller. So they got their $100,000. I took over the TD Bank mortgage. I took over being responsible for that payment of the $130,000 mortgage that we created together. And I helped sell it, of course. And then he was lending me that little top part, right? So still, this was a low or nothing down deal for me. So, and then, we negotiated that 30,000. He took half of the hit on that because he didn't have to sell or a house with a real estate agent. And I said, you know what? That's helping me not having to come up with $100,000 cash out of my pocket. I will eat the other 15 that comes out of my half. And so it was a win-win all the way around. And do you think that guy with 100,000 cash was a happy person? We'll just say, hell yeah. So,
yeah.
it's a good one there. We've talked about 3 different strategies now that on ways to close these deals.
And it's surprising, Dan, that the strategy, that sort of sub part of the strategy that we just talked about, where a seller will put a mortgage on his house in order to get some of the cash that's needed to make it flow, is actually shows up more than you'd think. Now, if you want to set up a scenario for the average person to go, that will never happen, that will just never happen, are you telling me the seller is going to put a seller who's in trouble or needs something done, he's going to put a mortgage on his house and give you the money, basically? Or maybe not give you the money, but to place extra financing on a property to make the deal work, it comes up a lot. And I've got one example of one of my clients who was looking to do an agreement for sale, and the existing mortgage, which was going to be the basic of the agreement for sale loan, wasn't quite enough for what my seller wanted to do. He's a renovator, and he needed to put some money into the property in order to do the renovation. And in discussions with the seller, he discovered that she had a mortgage that was part fixed rate and part HELOC, home equity line of credit. And she had room in her home equity line of credit to write a check for exactly the amount that my client needed to purchase the paint and carpet and everything to do the renovation. So he took over an amount equal to her existing fixed term, plus another 40 or 50,000 worth of HELOC room. And she wrote him a check and gave him money so he could do it. Like, you know, it's not just no money down. It's somebody actually giving you money so that the plan can work. And that happens way, way more than people think, way more.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that's important for people to understand is this is still at the heart of it, a real estate investing strategy. And so, you know, what comes up for me in Ontario here, if you go and buy a property that doesn't cash flow, and you buy it by way of agreement, and maybe your payments are a little bit higher because you're helping out that seller in whatever possible way because they lent you some of their equity, it still has to make fundamental sense as a real estate investor. Okay. So, you know, you're not going to go and write a check to that investment. Well, you know what? I wouldn't. Some people out there might, but you know, are you going to write a big check to your investment property every month because you didn't put a big down payment down on that? Maybe. But, you know, for me, I'm going to go hunt around and find that deal that does cash flow and puts money back in my check or in my bank account at the end of every month. Right. So they're out there, but I didn't want to say that, oh, you can just, it works everywhere, any location, any property. You know, that's not what we're saying here today. No. This is like, you still have to know the fundamentals. And for me, cash flow is king. And, you know, really, really important. A lot of people are creative with their cash flow. They might come out and say, hey, Dan, I don't care. I'm going to do Airbnb for 8 months of the year. That will more than make up for any negative cash flow for the other 3-4 months of the year. I'm good. Or maybe, you know, a guy was telling me this strategy actually earlier today on a call. He said, you know what, I don't only do 8 months of leases because, you know, there might be in a university, Kitchener, Waterloo, you know, some of the university towns, and they'll do an 8-month lease. And then, you know, assuming that the tenants are coming and going for the school year, and then do Airbnb for their property over the summer break. So, you know, maybe if you found a perfect house like that was a little bit on the light side, but you Airbnb'd it over the summer while little Billy went back home, you know, you might do that deal. So, you know, there's lots of different scenarios, but the point I was trying to make is for every property in every location at every price point, you know, this strategy still may not, you know, make sense for you. One time I did do this strategy where it didn't make sense on a rental basis, but it was for my own personal house. Because, you know, believe it or not, I'm the money guy. And the bank says, Dan, you own too many houses. No more mortgages for you. We don't care that you need a place to live. Get out of our bank. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, that was that Glenbrook one that we talked about, right? That brand new house. So here, you know, that would be the only time I would buy a house where it didn't make sense on a financial basis. I am buying my own personal house this way.
I remember how surprised I was when we were, you know, had been talking about the deal for quite a while before I realized that this was going to be your personal residence. And you know, as we were looking at the numbers, I'm going, wonder what Dan's thinking on this property. It's not not working as well as some of his other deals. And then, of course, when it was your own personal one, that worked well and solved the bank. It's hilarious, isn't it? You're the money guy. You put
I'm the money guy. I tell my clients that I'm like, you know, the situation that I described to all of you is saying the bank is going to shut you down one day. I said, what do you think? That hit me a long time ago after 26 years, right? So, you know, what do? We do commercial mortgages. We buy multiplexes. We do land development. I mean, we keep this wonderful world of real estate investing moving forward, but we always keep the seller finances in these creative ways in the back of our toolbox just in case. You never know when you're going to come across that deal that needs that solution that you've got.
No, you never quite know. Now, Donna or Dan and I have not been paying attention to the chat. Are there questions we have to answer, or can we carry on?
There's a
Couple of questions. Well, let's have a look here. What do I see? Is this strategy possible with multifamily properties? I find it difficult to get it in front of the owners. Well, Dan, what do you think?
I think that's so my belief is I haven't done one, but I'm sure you get a property owner that you can do this with commercial. You can answer maybe better than I can, but I think this person has got the challenge, right? I mean, you heard me say the most important thing is getting in front of that seller across the table and finding out what do they need out of this deal. So I know my friend Wade Fenner has done postcard campaigns where, he'll pull the registered owner from the land registry's office and find out, hey, here's the owner on title. I'm going to, spend $1 on a post stamp and send a postcard to see if I can connect with this person wherever they are at. So you might get lucky with a property manager, but you're right. That's going to be the challenge. You can do it, but you've got to find a way to get in touch with the owner.
We've got a couple of videos
Um,
on YouTube.
Donna's just reminding me that we have a couple of videos on YouTube that deal with that issue, because we've had students who have done that. So yes, you can use the agreement for sale strategy for multifamily properties. The concept is exactly the same for multifamily as it is for single family. The seller has a problem that needs fixing, and the agreement for sale strategy will help you fix this problem. So if you can fix a problem, you can buy whatever you want. Farmland is purchased by agreement for sale. Commercial properties are purchased by agreement for sale. In fact, that strategy is quite well known in the commercial and farmland side of things, as well as on the multifamily side. So yes, you can do multis using the AFS strategy.
Yeah, I came across a real estate agent who did this for self-employed people. They actually did the warehouse condos with the office in the front and then the big storage bays in the back.
Yeah.
They actually bought it and did almost like an AFS to the self-employed person in the unit themselves, and because they were self-employed, had trouble getting finances, so they worked in an agreement for a sales strategy with the tenant to actually end up purchasing the property. I guess you could call it in the reverse rent to own, right? So
yeah,
same kind of idea.
So just as we're getting to finish off here, Dan, I just want to maybe give a couple more examples of agreement for sale deals that will.
Somebody's watching that knows about the house I own in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan that I bought for $1.
Let's hear about that. Let's hear about that before we get into my stories. Tell us about Moose Jaw.
Well, Moose Jaw, I don't know how many properties I have owned over the years in Saskatchewan, but this was an example of finding, again, another property where, the seller unfortunately had a little bit of a health challenge. And this was right during COVID time, just, a horrible, unfortunate situation for this fine lady. And I had helped her out actually, getting some financing to renovate the house and fix and flip and sell, as I often do. And unfortunately, because of no, circumstance of her control with COVID and getting ill, she had to, sign the house back. And again, you're working with really good people when they say, hey, I'm just in a really bit of a bind in a stuck situation here. Can you help me out? And, that's music to my ears, and saying, hey, I think there's a way I can solve the problem. You won't have to go through this horrible, foreclosure situation. And so basically, the whole seller financing was set up. And I stepped in and took over the property, beneficial ownership wise, and started making those obligations, because I knew that if I put a renter in there was enough rent coming in to make the mortgage payment, the taxes, and the insurance and heat. And I think that was just COVID time. So I think I've been 2 years ownership of a house in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Go Snowbirds, the the aerial Canadian jet fighters. I love it out there.
So there's a bunch of stories like that. I'm going to finish with one where one of our students called me up and said, Barry, I've got a situation where this lady wants to sell me her house for about $120,000 under market. She works in town. She's got 2 or 3 dogs. She wants to get out to the country, and she wants to sell her house fast. And she's thinking she'll sell it to me for about $120,000 under market. I said, okay, well, what's your question? She said, well, you always teach us not to beat people up and to play for win-win. So how do I handle that? So after some conversation, the student went back to the lady who was looking to sell, and she said, you know, I'm happy to buy your house at the price that you've said, but why don't you just list the house with a realtor? You could make a lot more money and put a lot more money in your pocket instead of selling to me for this other price. And the lady went, I hate realtors. My neighbor's a realtor. I wouldn't deal with a realtor if they were the last person on earth, which, no, I'm not trying to diss any realtors. That's just what this seller said. Okay, so that didn't work. Well, maybe you've got some family members who can give you a hand with some money, with some transition money. You could give this property to a management company and they would rent it out and you'd have great positive cash flow. Nope. I don't like dealing with anybody. I want to be just on my own. And so our student is going, okay, well, all right. And so she said, well, why are you willing to deal with me and give me this good deal, which I love, by the way. The homeowner said, you know what? I got lots of calls from my ad. They advertised the house for sale. I got lots of calls from my ad. You were the only one who didn't try and beat me up and steal the property from me. So I'm happy to deal with you and give you a good deal. So, you know, that's what happens. People don't believe me when I tell them the stories that I've heard and that you heard about if you help a seller, if you're kind, if you play for win-win, you can do amazing deals that people don't believe you can do. And we're going to teach people all about that in Toronto, Dan. So I know you're going to be there to
yeah, I think Andrea said she's coming to Ontario, yes. And I'm going to be there. I love supporting and answering questions, and you will give lots of practical homework and applications. And I love just walking from table to table, you know, adding in my my gray hair wisdom, I call it. So
yeah, we're gonna have lots of folks coming out who have done lots of deals. It's so instructive listening to people who have actually done it and hearing the how they did it. It's not just theory; it's the real deal. It's hearing about real deals, and so I'm so looking forward to showing up in Toronto.
I think it's important for the Ontario people too, is that this is you know, not an underutilized strategy in Ontario. Why? Is because not a lot of the legal side of it has been known, or, you know, I think you've done an amazing job. Everybody on this call should be thanking you for, you know, promoting this and teaching and making the connections, because, you know, now everybody that's going to be at your event on the 1st is going to have access to, hey, let's say I find a deal here in Aurora, Newmarket, you know, wherever. You can actually say, hey, go talk to this person. They'll help you paper your contract. Take my templates. That will save you $10,000, and away you go. So, yeah, I think, you know, big thank you to you.
Well, thanks for that, Dan. It is going to be a ton of fun. We're looking forward to bringing it to Ontario in a market that's ripe for the agreement for sale strategy, where it has not been over the last few years. It's ready now, and people are going to be very glad to hear about it and put it to use in Ontario to do some great deals for them and to help folks out, which is always good to do. So, Dan?
Perfect. Hey, Barry.
Thanks for coming on.
Having me. It's all great. Right. I can't believe a whole hour went like this so fast. It's crazy. We're going to have to do this more often, my friend.
I'm always ready to do that, Dan. And the hour did zip along. I don't know. We could flap our gums like anybody, you and I.
It's like telling stories from way back, right? That's
I know. And current ones too.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for showing up and listening. Dan, thanks for coming on. And we'll see you in Toronto on April 1st. Thanks, everyone. Good night.